Welcome to the Digital Analytics Power Hour. Tim, Michael, Mo, and the occasional guest discussing digital analytics issues of the day. Find them on Facebook at facebook.com/analytics hour and their website analyticshour.io. And now, the Digital Analytics Power Hour.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Digital Analytics Power Hour. This is episode 91. I'm Amy Sample, Senior Director of Consumer Insights and Analytics at PBS and a past podcast guest. Whether on purpose or not, you are now part of a podcast recording in front of a live audience at Marketing Evolution Experience in Las Vegas 2018. What? They drink, they swear, but they care about analytics and how analytics gets used by organizations. Let me introduce you to the host. She is the manager of analytics at The Iconic, hailing from Sydney, Australia. Give it up for Mo Kiss.
Hi.
He is the senior director of analytics at Search Discovery. He calls Columbus, Ohio home. Let's hear it for Tim Wilson. And he's the analytics practice lead at Search Discovery from Atlanta, Georgia. It's Michael Helbling. Okay, let's start the show.
Well, hi everyone. It's maybe the first time we've been introduced by somebody else, which is awesome. Thank you, Amy Sample. All right. One of my favorite movie quotes is from a classic movie called The Inspector General with Danny Kaye. This is from the early days of colorization. Some of the SDI people in the room will know that I have movie quotes that are off the hook to me, but not well regarded by others. But there's a section where Danny Kaye's character is being confronted by someone else, and he goes to read this letter. And at the end, he's finally like, fine, maybe I can't read and write, but I'm not illiterate. And that quote kept going through my head, thinking about this topic of data literacy. And so we launch together into how do we sort that out? How do we become data literate in a world where we're neck deep in data, but dealing with business users and other people who maybe don't even understand it or don't quite get the nuances within it?
Drink. Every time Michael says illiterate, drink. I don't know.
Is that going to be a thing?
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably not.
I'm good with it.
Everybody at home, everybody driving to work in the morning.
Yeah.
On your
Drawing
morning
no
commute.
attention to our inconspicuous activities going on here on stage.
Well, okay, so do you want to start with defining data literacy? Is that where you'd like to start?
Jim's like the only one who's had a genuine crack at this, and I'm still not sure you got to a final resolution.
Jim Stern is literally in the room.
And Jim Stern has had a crack at it.
And he's had a crack at it as well. But no, what do we think? What is data literacy?
Well, and I think it kind of came around because we were kicking around this topic, and that kind of prompted me to organize some thoughts. And I don't think I helped the challenge that everybody says. You use the literacy example, that reading literacy seems like it's an easier thing. Can you read and comprehend or not? And data literacy, therefore it seems, we know what data is, we know what literacy is, so that's easy, right? But as I started looking for what's the real definition of data literacy, outside of a really sort of surface level of can I do or use or understand data, there's not much. So Jim actually has a post on the Marketing Evolution Experience blog where he kind of treats it as a spectrum. And actually data literate is not at one extreme of the spectrum. That's kind of on a progression. The way I wound up approaching it, which is still, I think, probably too simplistic, was that there are different dimensions of data literacy. That I was thinking there's metrics literacy. There, back in the day when people said, what's the difference between a visit and a page view? Or how is time on site measured? Or from web analytics. But that goes to any field, even if you say, revenue or lead source. So do I understand the data that I'm looking at, what that's actually reflecting in the real world? Mm-hmm. That's one type of literacy. I think there's tools literacy. There are people who are Excel or Tableau or R or Python jockeys who can use the tools to manipulate, and I think it's fair to put that under a literacy bucket. And then the other one I came up with, and I called it conceptual literacy, which I don't think is necessarily the best term, but that's actually understanding how to think about data, understanding the inherent uncertainty of data. I was in actually a session earlier today that was, I'm going to botch what it was. It was statistics for the non-data scientist. Is that what it was? And it was interesting because it was trying to talk through, hey, we go from this data, we understand this data, and then boom, we were all the way into an ANOVA. And that's a hell of a leap. So under conceptual literacy, I kind of throw all the stuff that goes beyond just, can you understand a chart or not? And I think that's probably still a grossly oversimplified view.
Yeah.
So,
How about you, Mo?
okay, I keep having this thing where every time someone talks about data literacy, what I come back to is, why do we need to know? Why do you need to know where you are on a spectrum, on some other scale? Is it about better understanding your stakeholder and their understanding of whatever data set you're working with? Is it about your own professional development? And I don't feel like we actually have that nutted out. Or maybe I'm just missing the point.
So I like that. So that part of it may be the way you say data versus others. No, I'm just kidding. Data. That's part of our problem. No, but here we are in Las Vegas, and 100 yards away or 400 yards away, it's hard to measure distances in these enclosed spaces. But there's all kinds of gambling that we could be doing instead of talking about data literacy. But who's a gambler here? Anybody? Show of hands knows what they're doing. I know you know what you're doing.
Love it how you do show of hands on an audio format.
Audio format. It's one of my gifts, is just helping people understand. There's only a couple people who consider themselves gambling literate in this room. But I could probably go play blackjack poorly. So I understand the mechanics of blackjack. But I don't understand a strategy for playing blackjack well. I don't know what levers can I pull to move blackjack in my favor, right? So in other words, how do I use data to maneuver a business? So as an analogy, I've been thinking about it because I'm in Vegas, so I'm thinking about gambling. And that's kind of the analogy that's sort of sticking with me is, we all kind of know what the games are. We should play craps. How do you play craps? I don't know. There's this line, you keep 2 chips behind it, and then there's numbers out there, and you bet some of them, maybe. Or maybe not.
But in marketing, it's basically like you're being told you're going to play blackjack. And so you have to. And
if I decided to become a professional gambler after today, do you think I might focus on it just a little more?
But you would be drawn to it, right? Whereas I think the challenge we go through, that I think part of it is, even as analysts and having grown up through the web interfaces and Microsoft Excel and kind of hitting what was kind of a natural plateau, and it was very easy for me to say, I'm continuing to improve my capabilities because I'm getting better and better at Excel, and totally missing, let's just call it the Matt Gershoff world of, there's a much deeper level of understanding and thought and thinking through data. And that's from somebody who's full-time in the space. But when we start shifting to people who say, well, I'm a digital marketer, I'm an SEO person,
right.
I need to use the data. So they're kind of they just sort of inherited that they're playing a game of blackjack. And they're not, if they say, you know what, I know what the rules are, and then they're missing something.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's that there is this, I don't even want to say the word bravado, but it's not like blackjack. I feel like people sometimes admit that they're not great at that.
Don't have to
with
take
data,
my
everyone
analogy
thinks
so
that.
far.
It's the
We're just pulling
Dunning-Kruger
along.
right there, right? I mean, it's.
But maybe
everyone thinks that they're awesome with data. I have a person at my company who shall remain nameless, who thinks that they make data-driven decisions, they're exceptional with data, they understand it. And there are times that you're trying to explain why they can't have a metric that's session-based at a user level or something like that you're just but you say you're a data person. I don't get this disconnect.
Yeah, or they haven't understood it. What's that called?
Well, the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yes.
Before that it was the illusory superiority. I mean, I do. I think that's what illusory superiority.
Yeah, no, say it again. I love it.
Yeah. See how much has he had to drink? But I do think that's a real, that if you pulled it'd be the classic Lake Wobegon, all marketers think they're more data literate than the average marketer. Yeah. And so if you're living in Dunning-Kruger is the less literate you are, the more likely you are to think, I know how to read a bar chart. That drives me up the fucking wall.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Little conflict. We were given speaker's notes, do not curse from stage, part of the podcast.
Oh,
so this
yeah.
is immovable object meets unstoppable force.
Tim Wilson
I think
style.
we just hit my profanity.
That's fine. I mean, we can always not have us back. We'll edit that out.
Clarifying question, helps.
Okay, so clarifying question. We're talking about marketers, but isn't this illusory competence, whatever thing you just said?
Illusory superiority.
Illusory superiority. I love it. All of that. That's so nice.
Is that alliteration? Or
Yeah, alliteration.
Okay.
Yeah. Isn't that true of anyone who approaches data? Even as analysts, aren't we kind of afflicted with this as well? So I just wanted to say it's not like only marketers have this problem. Or are you saying, like, because we're analysts, we're also just naturally humble before data, so marketers just have this, or...
No, I feel like we're better at picking out the flaws, because we understand the limitations, or we understand that there could be an error with this metric
Okay, I just
because
wanted
of this issue.
to get your point of view. Like, do
know.
we feel this was sort of, like, unique to our compatriots, or is this something we should all be on the lookout for?
I mean, the mission, I feel like I've been on a mission. Oh, yes. Sorry. When one is presenting against Gary Angel, we bring Gary Angel to the
podcast.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Gary Angel.
Where's the handheld?
Yeah. Gary, we've been warming up the crowd to have you answer a specific question.
This is perfect.
All right.
There's a concept called
Yeah.
illusory superiority. And do you believe that as it pertains to data literacy, do you think that affects both marketers and analysts, or just marketers as a general rule?
Let's reframe it.
I believe
that most analysts and
I am
most
so
marketers
friggin'
think they are-
lost.
Okay. The topic is data literacy. For those listening in their car, we just picked up an extra panelist, two-time past guest.
And I guess, third guest? Does this count?
Third time, yes.
Third time?
It counts.
Like Saturday Night Live, fifth time you get a jacket. So that's
Excellent.
got that to look forward to. So that's what we're talking about.
This is perfect because he kind of came in cold too. So can you define data literacy? This is going to be the definitive definition.
Yeah.
Jim Stern and I are both going to be like, oh yeah, that's right.
Having the ability to look at data, understand it, and apply it appropriately.
Well, that's way more.
Yeah, sounds
that
like it
was-
makes sense.
Well, it's going to make a short
It doesn't
episode.
mean anything, but heck, no, I don't know. That's what I would define it as. Where were you guys going with it?
Oh, we had whole frameworks built.
There were maturity models.
See, I'm not consulting anymore. I don't have to do that.
On Jim's model, I'm data blessed, I think. No, data hashtag lucky. No, but yeah, I think you said three words that I think match up nicely with your definition, Tim, which is understand. Say yours again.
Can't say it again.
No, dang it. We'll go back to the tape, but I think there was a good alignment. We'll go back to the show notes and we'll pick out where it doesn't match up. All right, so we have an excellent opportunity to maybe open the conversation up just a little bit. And we'd love to take some questions or comments. Where have you seen data literacy or lack of it impact you, or questions do you have for Gary Angel or the panel?
I would also really like to hear, why do you think it's important to understand where your organization or client or stakeholder is at? Because that's the thing that I'm kind of struggling with is it worth investing time to understand and map out kind of where everyone in the business is so that we can tailor what we do? Because I kind of think that's part of my job as an analyst anyway, is understanding where my stakeholders are at. So when we talk about data literacy, I sometimes struggle with the practical, tactical level to the very heavy documentation,
But do you want
model, maturity model kind of stuff.
You say meet them where they're at. Do you want to meet them where they're at and then drag them slowly? You think that naturally just happens? Because if you're constantly having the same beating your head against a wall, you have to spend the first hour and a half of an hour-long meeting just trying to get them to get over some misguided notion, then that's not efficient. So you do need to either stop engaging them, which is maybe not an option, or say, how am I also, one, recognizing, wow, like they really are hung up on time on page. Like,
But
they
isn't
cannot get
educating
past
bit
this.
our job? I mean, I just feel like that's our job, is to help get them from wherever they're at to the next bit. And sometimes that does mean repeating yourself a bunch of times, because apparently people have to hear things a bunch of times before it sinks in. But I just see that that's my job.
But I think that's where, when we just paint a broad brush of data literate or not, if it's treated as binary, even to some extent if you're treating it on that's where it's not the same
It's a spectrum.
answer. It's a spectrum, but I think it's a multidimensional, and it's a spectrum, and it's what actually matters for what they're doing right now.
So straight back to the complex definition.
Well, but but I think you may intuitively do it. I think a lot of these discussions we have to try to say, what are the angles? Should we do our training for our marketers? Probably not. Should we do here's how to navigate Google Analytics to answer basic questions? Maybe so. I've sort of loosely assessed that the entire marketing department doesn't understand it. So whether it's happening formally or not, I think.
Well, one thing I'd say is I don't think that data literacy is at all comparable to real literacy, in the sense that I don't think you do start with the most basic building blocks. I don't think you start with ABC and then get people CAT. And part of the reason for that is that people aren't learning to be data literate in a broad sense. They're not analysts. They're learning it in the context of their organization. So one of the things I'd say is you start with the ABCs for their organization, but that may be modestly advanced metrics that you're delivering to them, but in the context of what they can understand because they understand the business. So, I mean, I don't think it's a case, and I sometimes saw this, where we were often asked as consultants to deliver very, very simple reports to people that I thought were misleading. And the argument always was, you got to start simple. But I don't think that's a good argument. I think you got to start right and simple. And I think that's a basic distinction that people sometimes forget.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome, the crowd.
Give it up for Gary Angel. Whew. All right, we turned to the audience for questions like 3 minutes ago and then failed to do so, but now we are. And don't worry, we'll wait as long as we need to, because we can just edit out all the silent spots. Oh, perfect. Some people.
Hi there.
Hello.
I agree that we need to teach the basic. I often do that with some client, because honestly, sometimes I get into project. I'm consulting as an independent contractor. You got some project manager managing an analytic project. They don't even know anything about analytic. It's all over the place. Like they think that you're going to come in, install everything in 2 months, you're going to be gone, and everything's going to live on its own. So you really just got to start with the basic, like explain the ABCs. But I also agree with you that in some cases you cannot just wait for them to understand everything to deliver like the more advanced stuff, which is the right stuff. So I think there's a little bit of both, where you kind of know, you kind of need to cover some basics, so at least they have the right vision, they understand globally, maybe, especially for those who are new at analytic in an organization. But in other cases, you cannot just wait for them to be ready to understand everything.
And I think, are you, because you said, you brought up project manager, which makes me think of account manager, a client manager, that there's also that other challenge, is that times the analyst is separated from the business stakeholder with some intermediary. And then it's like, well, and I think this goes back to your question, if you have an account manager who just keeps promising that, give us a login to Adobe Analytics and my analyst will find glorious insights. Okay, now I've got to educate the account manager or the project manager. So, and then ultimately I want to get to educating the business person, which is another.
Well, in this case, I was more referring to when organizations are really new at analytics. It often starts as a project. Okay. And they don't have anybody. You come in, and then they have like this map. They put this roadmap and this time frame, but nothing makes sense. So in like cases like that, I find like having a session of like 101 analytics to start with. It's like a good way to align the manager and the executive and everything on the vision.
Week 1, tag the site. Week 2, make a dashboard. Week 3, automate the generation of insights.
Week 4, massive insights.
We've already come up with a work breakdown structure for you. You're welcome.
But see, to me, that does just sound like that is part of the journey that you would go on with a client or a stakeholder to educate them. So that's why I kind of struggle sometimes when we talk about data literacy. To me, I'm like, that's just part of what we do in educating about data and getting people that one step deeper to understanding what it is they're working with and how they're doing it.
All right.
Hi, Joe Ubler, first-time question asker, long-time listener. One of the things that I seem to experience on a fairly frequent basis, and I would love to hear from you guys, is if you have a person that you're working with who is a key stakeholder who seems to have been highly educated in something that is not at all the approach that's going to work for them in this new situation that they're in. How have you guys approached those things where they almost feel like they're the experts, but yet they're the experts in what's not necessarily right for this context?
The old, I think I've heard the, the person who's asking this is a data scientist or is a PhD, so they're really, really smart. And it's like, well, that's good, like that's great to know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually, I guess smart's kind of a too pejorative of a way to put it, but it is a challenge because you're like, I'm not wanting to tell you that you're dumb, but I do need to kind of guide you as to why that doesn't work, here.
Yeah. I recently just personally started working with someone, a guy named Tim Wilson.
Where was this going?
Got him. No, so it is interesting because we definitely run across that, and I feel like there's two ways personally that I've handled that. One is if they're open to the conversation, then you can have it and try to showcase the differences and why this works and why that doesn't. And sometimes they're not, and then it just becomes a much more complicated scenario. And honestly, I don't know the answer to that. It's just conflict at that point, and then effective management.
So we're down to Mo or Gary. Have to come up with the answer.
Two things. To be honest, I'm still trying to figure out the answer to that question myself. So everything I share with you is a test and learn from my own experience, which I don't know yet whether they're paying off. Probably not. So one method, I work at a company where a lot of our executive team came from big consulting companies. I would describe them as very data literate, which means that they also want to see a shit ton.
Why would you even assess them? Like, why would you have to think about that? I'm sorry.
Well,
you can't. You just sort of tossed it out there.
Never in the history of our show have we come to blows.
So they are very good with data, though, and very competent, and would sometimes say to me, like, Mo, I want this graph with this exact thing on it, answering this exact question, and this is how to do it. But I still go through, and what I do is I say, sure, I'll give you exactly what you want, but I also think this other way is a really good way. Here are the reasons why I think this way is really good. Yeah. And I put a shit ton of research into an appendix, which if they want to go look at, they can look at, but I don't include it in the actual content, because I do weirdly have a CEO that will go read that appendix and educate himself further. And I present that to him, pick what you want. The other tactic, which I've yet to try, but I've seen it, it's dynamite. This guy at my company does it, which I've mentioned on the show before.
Different guy from the...
Different guy.
Okay.
Different guy. All anonymous guys.
Mo has two coworkers here who are literally running through. They're like, when is she going to bring us up? Is it going to be positive or negative?
But what he does is he goes to everyone that's in a meeting, because our decision-making really happens in one meeting, and everyone is there, and we go through a memo, yes, insert some kind of wisecrack.
What?
And we make a decision.
Long-time fan of the one-page memo.
Anyway, he goes through to every single stakeholder before the meeting and tries to get as many of them on side before the meeting.
Yeah.
And so then when you have that one person that's like, well, I would have done it this way, everyone else is like, actually, I kind of think that way works because you've already addressed all their concerns. So I should probably get better at that one. But anyway.
I was going to say two things. One, and it's funny because the previous question, we used to talk about project managers as people whose job it was to know nothing. And now you're talking about somebody whose job it is to know too much in a way. Coming to digital is hard for a lot of people who have done traditional analytics. It is quite different. I do think that finding the analogies, finding similar problems in their skill set, and then appealing to them and showing them the relationships. If you can find analogies, a lot of times that helps. I also really like Mo's idea there about, do what they want, but also do what you want and give them a little bit of both.
I think I learned that from Tim.
And I think that's that's a really good way to do it. There's nothing wrong with giving people what they want, and I think that's often an obligation we have, but it's a necessary first step for building their trust. And when they get what they want, sometimes they see the limitations in it, and then you can surprise them with something extra too. But it's a hard challenge for sure.
Which I think that the counter of that is like telling them that they're wrong, like, never works. And it's kind of funny sitting up here with, like, the nicest guy in analytics, Michael, Mo, who's just, personable. That I think, and I don't think I was even necessarily in analytics before I kind of learned the hard way that just because somebody's wrong, like, guess what? Telling them they're wrong is not going to really help your cause. So kind of the yes and I think that some of the people I admire most in the industry, I sort of see that they they know how to meet somebody where they are and kind of gently guide them and help them kind of evolve their own thinking. But it's not what's the one thing I do in this one meeting to do that. It's like, okay, we're on a journey together that person doesn't realize they're on.
Well, it's funny, though, because Michelle Kiss's session today was talking about exactly that. Sometimes when you have...
You're not Michelle Kiss?
Oh, geez, no. But, we'll have photographic evidence this time. She was talking about exactly that, where sometimes when you give someone more evidence that they're wrong, all it does is make them, bunker down on their initial belief. And that's just something that we're conditioned to do. And so try as you might to be like, look, I've got all this evidence. This is totally irrefutable. They'll be like, actually, I refute it. So it doesn't always work out well. Joe's going to take us through the rest of the show. Because there's the data piece, right? I'm looking at the evidence, and there's all the confirmation bias and all the other kind of biases. And then there's the process and the approach, which is tougher. And I think maybe that was also kind of where you were coming at it. Like, no, we don't want to start by, listing off 72 KPIs. That's probably not, we don't want to start by doing a big export and building a model off of it. We want to start somewhere else. And that can be tougher. I do believe that's an insidious thing in our industry, that a lot of analysts are not doing things necessarily the most effective way. So I'm learning from therapy. It's not right or wrong. It's effective or not effective. But you have a huge company that does something. We do the weekly report, and the weekly report gets sent out. Okay, maybe the weekly report is 42 slides long, and nobody looks at it, and it's not effective. Okay, that's not good for that company. Maybe at some point they'll figure it out. The problem is the people at that company leave the company, and they've risen to some level. They go somewhere else. They get a position of responsibility. They want to say, we're going to do something. So they say, this is what I had at my old company. I think that's a really, really tough thing for us to battle, because they're like, look, I came from insert massive brand, and you want to believe that the thing you were doing for 15 years, that had always been done for the last 50 years, that company was the most effective thing to do. So now you go to a different company and you say, that's what I'm going to tell my team to do. I'm training them. And it's just this vicious cycle.
All right, try as you might to filibuster. We are going to take more questions.
I have a question from the Twitter sphere. Matt Gershoff wants to know, what are you drinking?
Oh.
Well, what I have discovered from an extensive analysis, I did experience the 100-degree heat because I tried the in-casino and outside casino. It is hard to get without hopping in a cab, a decent liquor selection. So we're just drinking Maker's Mark.
Except if anyone comes in the room who actually works at Caesars, we're all drinking iced tea.
Corking fee
we're
be
not
damned.
drinking anything.
Where's the bottle that we're not drinking from? Is there?
Oh, of course it's next to Krista.
Of course. If anybody, are there glasses over there?
If you would also like
to
not partake,
yeah,
do so at your own peril.
It's not Lagavulin.
All right. Other questions?
I've got a question.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Fine.
I have a question. So what do you think is more
I'm sorry, your name is, ma'am?
Michelle Kiss.
Wait, I thought you were Michelle Kiss.
Oh, wait, maybe I'm Mo Kiss.
They really know how to run a joke way over the line.
People are still confused.
That's true. So what do you think is more dangerous? The data illiterate analyst or stakeholder who is let loose on the data, or the analyst or stakeholder who is approaching the data with an agenda?
Ooh.
Ooh.
I actually feel like the agenda's worse.
Yeah.
The reason that I think the agenda's worse is because it's going to bias your results versus when you're incompetent, you can learn stuff or someone can educate you. An agenda, like reshaping an agenda is a tough game. But can we vote? And then we're going to do like a percentage of the audience so that people can.
If you do a show of hands, my head will explode. So it better be by applause.
Okay, fine, by applause. By applause. Who thinks option 1, which was the data illiterate numpty?
Numpty.
Yeah. We're going to have.
Who represents the bigger threat?
So we have two options by applause. Option 1 is the data illiterate analyst running amok through the data. Option 2 is the analyst with an agenda. Which one is more harmful? We're going to do option 1,
and I've already
applause,
biased the
and
audience
option
by
2,
telling them what I think.
Applause. Yeah, but what if you bias them and you still lose? So option 1, who thinks the data illiterate analyst running amok?
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's good.
Option 2, the one analyst with an agenda.
The agenda. All right. Oh.
Question for the AV guy. How well is applause picked up in the audience? We'll fill it in later.
We'll go with the agenda. So we think that basically that was a vote between Facebook and Cambridge Analytica right there.
Do people who have an agenda consciously have an agenda?
I think that's the question, right? That was kind of the question. I think you can be data illiterate with an agenda. That does exist, right? So maybe that's the most dangerous. Never thought it's the super.
It's definitely a quadrant.
Yeah. All right, we have time maybe for one more. Yes.
I kind of look at like data literacy as an art, more or less, and I wonder from your guys' perspective, how do I like get my data literacy skills up? From your perspective, how do you just hone your skills? Do you do like puzzles?
So first off, you are arriving at the start, which is to know that there is no destination. But Tim's the one that said it in our show notes. He's like, yeah, the more you know, the more you learn there is to know. And I think that's really what the journey we're all on. And so to your point, I think that makes sense. I think honing those skills is it's a personal path. But yeah, there's lots of things I think you can do to do that. People play chess. I read a lot of books. I watch an inordinate amount of YouTube videos.
Yeah, I don't think that helps.
Yeah, probably not. I'm culture literate, but or I try to be.
That's interesting. It makes me think that I probably felt I was more data literate 3 years ago than I feel like I am now. I don't know that I'm moving backwards. I think I'm just becoming more aware.
Yeah.
So it's actually really funny that you asked that. I had a team lunch not long ago, and we were talking about this exact concept. So our product manager was asking, like, me and all of the engineers in our team and our UX, like, who tinkers on the weekend? Whatever it is, the field that you work in. Like, who reads blogs, or if you're Tim, builds stuff in R. Like, do you tinker around in your area of work on your weekend or your evenings? And across the team, there was some like really mixed results. Some of us did, some of us never did. Some of us did at different peaks and troughs in our life. I think you have to figure out what works for you. And what I've worked out, there are times where I'm not in a space to learn, and when I'm away from work, I actually need that time away to be out of work, because sometimes that helps me think through a problem even better. But then there are also times where I'm really like, I want to play around with an R script on my Saturday afternoon. And it actually doesn't matter whether you fall into the like, I want to spend all weekend working on stuff, or I don't want to. Just, you've got to figure out which bit works for you, and also learn the stuff that you enjoy. Because I've tried to do it where you force yourself to learn the stuff you don't like, and you just end up miserable and you don't want to do it. So whatever it is, whether it's like stats or like data visualization or like automating a report, it really doesn't matter. It's like, pick the thing that you like, and I would suggest getting better at that than trying to guilt yourself into spending time on stuff that you're not good at anyway.
Learn to love it.
I think that's really good advice. And a couple things I'd say. One, I think it's always a trough if you're spending your weekends looking at data. That's not a peak, that's a trough. But having said that, a couple things I guess I'd say. One, there is an academic side to data literacy. And it is actually kind of sad how little many analysts know about statistics. And I personally was never academically trained in stats, which I don't regret because it is kind of a boring subject. But having said that, I think there is some academic work that people could benefit from. I would also say that data literacy, you described as an art. I think that's fair. I probably would put it as a craft. You learn it by doing it. You get your hands on the numbers. That's the only way to do it. And I think actually engaging with data, trying to figure things out and trying to come to conclusions is the only way I've ever seen anybody actually get competent at it. I mean, the academic side on the stats, that's useful to know, but it's not going to make you actually good at it until you actually start doing stuff. So that'd be about what I said. Get your hands on the data and do real stuff. Not bad to fill in some academic theory, but no one ever got good at it without getting their hands dirty in the data.
I completely agree. I think practical stuff is super important.
Yeah, and read Measuring the Digital World by Gary Angel. That'll also help.
Oh, yeah, book plug, book plug.
Hey, I plug it because it's true. All right, so we are out of time, but we have enjoyed so much getting a chance to spend a little bit of time with you. There are people listening right now in the future who may have questions or comments, and we would love to hear from you. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that through things like our Facebook page or the Measure Slack, Lee Sensi in the house, and or Twitter. And we'd love to hear from you. There's a number of people in the room right now, and we're so thankful we got to spend this time with you, many of whom we've had the chance to meet, but many we haven't, and we'd love to get a chance to meet you sometime during Marketing Evolution Experience. Enjoy the rest of the show, and remember, I say this confidently for my 3 co-hosts this time, Gary, Mo, and Tim, keep analyzing.
Rock flag and data literacy.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, or Measure Slack group. We welcome your comments and questions. Visit us on the web at analyticshour.io, facebook.com/analyticshour, or at analyticshour on Twitter.
So smart guys wanted to fit in, so they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.